Welcome to Pick a Card, Any Card.
Where we pick a card.
Any card.
And reveal it from the top of our library.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Devin.
Today's cards are Chronatog
and Ludevic's test subject.
So today I wanted to talk about Chronatog. Chronatog is a relatively straightforward card. It is from Visions, which is the second set in the Mirage block. It costs 1 generic and 1 blue. It is a 1/2 Atog creature. Mirage happened during the time that Teferi was missing.
Okay.
There was a war going on Dominaria, like there always is.
So it's one of those, like, way early sets.
It's a way back set.
Yeah. Alright.
Chronatog's ability is, skip your next turn. Chronatog gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Use this ability only once each turn. Its flavor text reads, for the Chronatog, there is no meal like the present. Which I think is hilarious.
But he eats the future.
No, he eats the now.
No, because you skip your next turn. He eats the future.
That's not how time works.
Yes, it is.
Well, if he's eating,
Excuse me, but
the now,
I am a validated time traveler.
Validated?
Validated.
There is only one printing of Chronatog during Visions. He was a rare. The artist's name is Christopher Rush. The art depicts this greenish-blue salamander-like creature with white orbs for eyes and a wide, grinning, cartoonish mouth that's full of these sharp, crooked teeth. He actually looks like he's in quite good humor.
He's a good guy. Just look at him. I mean, he's just like all the other Atogs. They look so happy, like they're about to kill you.
Yeah, and Chronatog is an Atog, which is a creature type in Magic. Most Atogs live in Dominaria. There are a few scattered throughout the multiverse. Mirrodin comes to mind. There's at least 1 or 2 Atogs on Mirrodin. Atogs are these interesting creatures that each Atog eats something, and a specific thing that it draws power from. Chronatog specifically devours time. There are other Atogs.
Atog, who I assume eats other Atogs.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool. I just guessed. I know he's 5 colors, and I know there's a bunch of other Atogs to do stuff.
Yeah. There are several different kinds of Atogs. There's the Atog, which is the most common type, and it eats artifacts, various metallic substances. There's the Megatog, which is a offshoot of the Atog. It's just huge and it's only found on Mirrodin. The Foratog eats forests, just wood and surrounding woodlands, and its ability is represented by sacrificing lands.
Makes sense.
The Chronatog eats
time.
Necrotog eats corpses.
Probably eats things from graveyard.
The Necrotog, you remove the top creature card in your graveyard from the game. It eats creatures out of your graveyard. The Oratog eats enchantments. And then there are some Atogs that have been bred from these Atogs that eat 2 different things, but they don't get the same sort of power drawn from either one. So the Phantatog eats enchantments and psychic energy. The Psychotog eats psychic energy and decomposing flesh. So it's a combination of... Actually, I don't know what it's a combination of.
Wait, Phantatog?
Yeah.
Well, discarding usually a black thing, so I would suggest black-white. Oh, it's blue-white.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, wait, psychic energy. Duh. Psychic energy is
which
totally
is discarding a card from your hand.
Yeah. Well, it eats psychic energy and, like, your thoughts.
Right, and that's represented by discarding a card from your hand. So there are some various other Atogs. And then there is the Atog, which is kind of fun. It eats other Atogs.
He's King Atog, who eats Atogs.
So he gets +X, where X is the sacrificed Atog's power. So if you just have a bunch of Atogs out, and you activate their abilities, and then sacrifice them to Atog, you have this monstrous creature.
Yeah. I love it. Like, in the art for Atog, it has pictures of all the other Atogs.
Yeah, Chronatog actually does appear in this art.
Yep. I think it's, like, almost all of them.
So the Chronatog eats time, which is represented by sacrificing your next turn, which is kind of cool. Now, a lot of people don't like this card.
For obvious
reasons. Why would you give up a valuable resource such as your next turn?
To give something +3/+3. If Giant Growth has taught us anything, that is the equivalent of 1 mana.
Right. It seems sort of not good. It seems like a bad idea.
It's awful. Like, in any normal situation, you would never want to skip your next turn. The only exception is if you are going to die at the beginning of your next draw step or something. And even then, you're just going to die at the beginning of the next one.
Well, interestingly enough, its ability can be activated during your opponent's turn at instant speed. If you have no cards in your library, you can just keep skipping your next turn and prolong your death inevitably.
Yeah. Like, well, if you can't kill me, then we'll never win. Never end this game. So I just realized you can do it once per turn. That means you can do it on your turn, and then do it on their turn, skip their next 2 turns.
Yep.
For maximum turn skipping value.
For maximum turn skipping value. So
if they stifle it at one point, and you're like, oh no, I can't have a turn, you have 1 on buffer.
So, and actually, the weirdness is, the payment is not skipping your next turn. The payment is 0 mana.
Oh, this is in the Oracle text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The payment is 0. You pay 0 mana. Mm-hmm. It gets +3/+3 until end of turn. You skip your next turn. You activate this only once per turn.
That makes sense because you can't skip your turn now, like as part of the activation. You can't just like, all right, I skip my next turn, but you haven't had your turn yet.
Oh
yeah. That's why they changed the Oracle text, because, like, mechanically speaking, it just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it does make sense. If you skip your next turn as part of the cost, why they changed the Oracle text is because if you skip your turn as part of the cost, and someone stifles the ability, you still don't get your turn.
That's true.
With the Oracle text being changed, if they stifle the ability, you still get your next turn, which makes this marginally better.
A little bit better. And it also, just mechanically speaking, makes more sense. Because you can't skip your turn now.
Yes, you can.
No, it'd be like, you could end your turn now, but then it wouldn't work because it would end the thing now. But, like, you can't... It's like, say, it'd be like the activating ability being pay 2 at the beginning of your next end step. Like, alright, I activate this ability. Pay the cost. I will. Later. It's like, what? That's not how it works.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
there.
like, mechanically speaking, it just doesn't work, and that's why they just changed it. Like, all right, this works better rules-wise. We can actually program this.
Chronatog's ability is meant to reflect its unique ability to draw strength from devouring time itself.
Yeah.
And it appears that, at least flavor-wise, devouring time takes it either a lot of time or just an immense amount of focus.
Well, obviously it takes a lot of time, as you literally eat time.
But because you can only activate this ability once a turn, it seems like it takes a lot of focus or time to eat time.
Well, no, it's because you're full. He eats an entire turn, so he's like, all right, I'm good. Can't just eat more. It's like eat an entire meal to.
Well, the other Atogs don't
poop or something. I don't know.
The other Atogs don't seem to have that drawback. The other Atogs can eat as much as they want to, ad infinitum, if you have the resource.
Well, the difference being is you don't technically have infinite of those other resources.
That's true.
You'll eventually run out of psychic presence. You'll eventually run out of enchantments or artifacts.
Or land.
Or land, for that matter. I doubt you'll eventually run out of time, especially when we're borrowing time from the future.
But it is kind of interesting because Chronatog gets the biggest bonus, aside from Atog.
Yeah.
Chronatog gets the biggest bonus for just one consummation.
Atog gets...
plus X.
Which X is the number of Atogs you have, the number of
X
power.
Is the power that the sacrificed Atog had.
So you sacrifice all your stuff you need to make your Atogs great, and then the Atogs themselves to make Atog like a 50-50.
Right.
It's really fun. That's an EDH deck in work.
It is. I've started looking into that one.
There's 10 Atogs? I mean, he's a 5/5 already.
Yeah.
When you bring him in, there's a decent chance you'll have at least a 4/4 Atog.
Right.
And so he'd be 9/9.
So I like this creature just because it's a creature that a lot of people completely overlook because either it's not good, like they don't
because it's not.
That's we don't want to say things aren't good here. Either because
yes, but this is a case where it is definitely a bad thing. Like you skip your turn to get +3/+3. I mean, no one's going to say, oh, that's a good card. Everyone's going to say exactly what you're going to say. It's like, if you build a deck around it, it's really fun and you can use it to your advantage. I'm like, yeah, but it's still not a good ability.
Fair enough. And to that point, there's one specific deck that I've seen time and again built around this card. And that card revolves around Stasis.
Yep. That is generally the go-to because cumulative upkeeps. I've seen Stasis and...
Stasis is 1 generic and 1 blue for an enchantment that reads, players skip their untap steps. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Stasis unless you pay 1 blue. Now what players will do with this is
they will stop you there because I want to point out the fact that the art on Stasis is so strange. Look at that. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's like the Tin Man and a weird little fox thing standing on a scale with a paint palette and the moon. I don't know.
And like,
I have no idea what's happening
like
here.
A pie, it appears to be. Like the fox is eating a pie blindfolded, and I think they're frozen in time or something. It's really wonky art and doesn't make any sense. But I'm pretty sure this... Who drew it? Faye Jones. Pretty sure this Faye Jones guy was drawing something pretty deep here, and no one else understands it.
And I certainly don't. But what a lot of players will do with Stasis and Chronatog is, on their opponent's turn, activate Chronatog's ability, have a 4/5, don't do anything with it, then they've skipped their next turn, they don't have to pay Stasis's upkeep cost, and they just slowly grind their opponent out. Yep. Their opponent can then eventually no longer do anything. Which I think is a terrible, terrible thing to do. It makes you a horrible human being.
Well, in this deck's defense, you're not saying your opponent doesn't get to play the game, like taking infinite turns yourself. You're saying that you don't get to play.
You're also saying your opponent doesn't get to play because they eventually cannot do it.
But imagine, like, it's a thing you do once. Just to kind of show people, just to show it off, and when someone gets mad. And then you use it after the game, and it's like, wow, your deck must suck if it can't beat me when I'm not doing anything. I'm literally skipping all my turns, and you can't beat me? Wow, your deck is bad.
It's a deck you play if you're an asshole.
Yes, I'm not arguing that.
I decided that I wanted to get the most out of Chronatog while still maintaining turn economy and allowing people to play Magic. That's not so bad. Everybody wants to play Magic.
Yeah, but like, it must be the blue player in me who, like, I want to be the 1% and I want to be the only person playing Magic in the room. That's why I play blue and control and counterspell.
I want people to enjoy playing against me.
I may not have taken a couple infinite turn combos in my day.
Well, I mean, who hasn't? I haven't. Well,
in my defense, it was a Merfolk aggro deck, so if I got an infinite turn combo off, I deserved it.
Or it was incredibly easy because it was a Merfolk aggro deck.
Actually, it's not. It's very hard to get that infinite turn combo off.
Anyway,
I will explain that in another episode.
I didn't want people to immediately start trying to kill me the second I dropped a Chronatog for 2 mana turn 2. So, the idea that I came up with was, in order to utilize Chronatog's ability, while still maintaining standard move economy, is to utilize a card called Final Fortune. Final Fortune costs 2 red, it's an instant, and the text reads, take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game.
Seems fair.
Seems fair. It's 2 mana to take an extra turn. It's a last-ditch effort card. It lets you get, if you need one more turn to win the game, you can just get in there. It's all or nothing.
Yep, that's why it's called Final Fortune, because it's the literal Final Fortune.
There are 2 other cards that are very similar to this, and both exactly the same to one another.
Yeah.
There is Last Chance.
There it is. That's the one.
And Warrior's Oath.
A very, very specific name.
Yeah.
Like Last Chance. This is it.
Last Chance.
Like,
Last Chance, Final Fortune. It's right there in the card. This is it.
Yep. I'm going to point out, though, that in Final Fortune, in the art, it actually looks awesome because it appears to be a guy finding a treasure, and behind him is himself going through a portal, so I assume a time portal, to stab himself to get the treasure.
That is what it appears to be, yeah.
And it's actually really, really cool.
Last Chance and Warrior's Oath are sorceries that do the exact same thing. I don't run either of them. Because Final Fortune is actually the cheaper of the 3, monetary-wise. Not sure why that's the case. But because it is an instant.
I would say probably just because it's been printed more. Like, that's the only one. I mean, it's rare in, like, 4 editions. And those are relatively newer editions compared to the other ones. So it's just probably a higher supply.
I picked Final Fortune specifically to work with Isochron Scepter. Isochron Scepter is a 2-mana artifact that has imprint. When Isochron Scepter enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your hand. You pay 2 mana and tap Isochron Scepter. You may copy the exiled card. If you do, you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost.
I'm making an executive order that we will never cover this card because it'll never end.
Yes.
That episode would never end because there's fog, there's counterspells, there's silence,
there are billions
kill spells,
billions of 2-mana cards.
Yeah,
I never planned on covering this card. I only intend to use it to highlight when it would be useful in other things.
Probably the most busted one would be like Smallpox, because it makes people discard a card, sacrifice a land and a creature or something like that.
Right. Final Fortune is 2 mana. You can imprint it onto Isochron Scepter, and then the fun begins. Because Final Fortune's wording is very specific. Take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. That extra turn. Not the next end step. Not this vague end step, the next end step you take. That extra turn's end step, which you can feed to Chronatog.
Yep.
It's your turn. You pay 2 mana. You take an extra turn after this one. You feed that turn to Chronatog. He's fat and happy as a 4/5.
Well, you've seen his art. He's fat and happy anyway.
Well, he's fat and happy anyway. You skip that next turn, and you can swing in with a 4/5. Then your opponent's turn comes around. You could do that if you had another Final Fortune, or if you have a card that lets you untap artifacts, such as Unwinding Clock or a Phaedo Alchemist. You can cast Final Fortune again, eat that next turn with Chronatog, and you have a 4/5 blocker. Either your opponent has to deal with it, or they're very reluctant to block.
Like, another alternative to taking things like Final Fortune is I don't know its name off the top of my head, but it's a Sphinx. It's a blue-black Sphinx that you can
It's blue. No, go ahead.
It's blue-black that you swing and you can take another turn, but he can't attack during extra turns.
Metamaya's blue-white.
I could have sworn he was blue-black. Well, look at his card. He clearly looks like he's supposed to be black.
Yeah, Metamaya the Ageless is a 6-mana legendary creature. 4/4 with flying. Whenever Metamaya the Ageless deals combat damage to a player, take an extra turn after this one. Metamaya the Ageless can't attack during extra turns.
Yep.
So Metamaya is another very effective way just to get those extra turns. Mm-hmm. He's 6 mana, so he's comes out late.
Yeah.
My goal was to make the mana curve on this deck relatively low.
Yeah.
So you can just drop Chronatog, and then very cheaply take extra turns. The most expensive extra turn that I have.
Well, take extra turns so you can skip them.
Right. Take extra turns and then feed them to Chronatog.
Yeah.
The next most expensive card that I have is Stitch in Time at 3 mana. It is a 1 generic, a red and a blue. For a sorcery, flip a coin. If you win the flip, take an extra turn after this one. It's sort of a hit or miss. You can get that extra turn and then feed it to Chronatog and have a 4/5, or you don't get the extra turn. Another good way to get these extra turns is Lighthouse Chronologist. Lighthouse Chronologist is 2 mana for a 1/3 with level up. The level up cost is 1 and allows you to put a level counter on it. And you can only level up as a sorcery. At level 4 through 6, he's a 2/4. At level 7 and up, he is a 3/5 with, at the beginning of each end step, if it's not your turn, take an extra turn after this one. You allow that ability to resolve at the end of your opponent's turn. Mm-hmm. Feed that extra turn to Chronatog.
Yep.
Or take that extra turn and feed your normal turn to Chronatog. Mm-hmm. Either way.
If you play this in multiplayer, though, that gets a little complicated because you'd be taking more than one turn every round. So I guess you just keep feeding Chronatog.
You just keep feeding Chronatog. Anytime you would take an extra turn, just feed it to Chronatog.
Yeah.
So just in case your opponent decides to get tricky and actually play the game of Magic and somehow gets rid of your Chronatog, or otherwise forces you to otherwise gets rid of your ability to skip the Final Fortune turn. You have Magosi the Water Veil. Magosi the Water Veil is a land.
Insurance.
Yeah, it's insurance. Magosi the Water Veil enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for a blue mana. You can pay 1 blue mana and tap it to put an Eon counter on Magosi the Water Veil. You can tap Magosi the Water Veil and remove an Eon counter from Magosi the Water Veil and return it to its owner's hand. Then take an extra turn after this one. Now that's there just to keep you from abusing it.
Yeah.
When it comes back to your hand, it loses all other counters. So you could skip a whole bunch of turns and have a whole bunch of counters on it, but you only get the 1 from it.
Yeah.
So it's not an abusable card at all. But it's only there... It's there because it taps for blue mana, which is very useful.
Yeah.
And it's there because it lets you skip a turn if for some reason you don't have Chronatog and you have a Final Fortune coming up. If your opponent somehow forces you into that extra turn, that Final Fortune turn, you have 1 more life insurance policy. Sundial of the Infinite, which is enough of a card to do an episode on. Sundial of the Infinite is a 2-mana artifact. You pay 1, and you tap it, end of the turn. And you can only activate this ability during your turn. So what this does is exile all spells and abilities on the stack. Discard down to your maximum hand size. Damage wears off, and this turn and until end of turn's effect ends. So ordinarily, abilities that would trigger at the end of the next end step would get skipped and then come into effect during the next end step. You don't need to worry about this with Final Fortune. You skip over the trigger and you don't have to worry about it because it's that specific turn.
Like, this deck is different and unique, and of course it has Soul Ring, because you need Soul Rings. Soul Ring is good.
Because it's a casual deck, it has Soul Ring.
Ugin's Nexus?
Oh yeah, Ugin's Nexus.
What does that do?
So Ugin's Nexus...
I remember it being good. Go ahead.
Ugin's Nexus is a 5-mana legendary artifact. If a player would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead.
Oh, this works so well with Chronatog.
If Ugin's Nexus would be put into a graveyard from the battlefield, instead exile it and take an extra turn after this one. It's sort of another insurance policy.
Well, it's also, it gives you, it does nothing and does everything for your deck. Like, not only does it prevent you from losing on those extra turns, it prevents you from taking them. So there's no reason to not eat them with Chronatog.
Right. You couldn't... It doesn't stop you from taking extra turns or from effects that would give you extra turns.
The whole point of this deck is I'm not taking extra turns, but I'm not losing turns either.
Right.
And that's exactly what Ugin's Nexus does.
It's like, oh, well, okay, I guess you destroyed my Chronatog. I can't eat my next 12 turns.
The worst, they would have to, you get a thing and destroy the Chronatog and get rid of Ugin's Nexus. In response to you doing Final Gambit, or the way it would work is you usually take your Final Gambit turn, or after you take your Ugin's Nexus turn, so you have an additional turn of, hopefully I have another Chronatog in hand, or something like that. It's so interesting and strange and weird.
And these are the kinds of decks I like to build. I also run Chronatog Totem, which is just another...
Which is more Chronatog,
Chronatog Totem is a 3-mana artifact, so it's a little more expensive than Chronatog, but it taps for a blue mana, or you can pay a generic and a blue to turn it into a Chronatog.
Yeah, it has the exact same ability.
Yep.
Except this one's got the Oracle text version of it.
Well, yeah, because it was printed in Time Spiral.
Yep, Chronatog Totem is actually pretty good.
But it gives you a...
It's in Time Spiral, so they had to reprint the one that eats time and makes time. And I guess he ate too much time, and now he is a rock. I don't know.
Or someone worshipped that.
Yeah, maybe he's dead. Maybe it's from the future.
Do you know how thrilled I would be if they reprinted Chronatog?
Maybe. Well, I think the whole point of Time Spiral was that it was a look so far into the future that things were different.
Do you want to move on to your card?
No, I want to talk about the best interaction and just okay, I'm gonna just counter all your fire gambits, or I'm going to prevent you from taking your other turns somehow.
Right.
Surprise. your Chronatog is kind of shut down.
I love how you change the name of Final Fortune every time you say it.
I do?
Yes.
I did it intentionally. I'm glad you caught on to that.
But I think that covers everything that I had for Chronatog.
Alright, so my card for the day is Ludevic's Test Subject. Ludevic's Test Subject is a 0/3 lizard for 1 and a blue mana. His abilities are Defender and pay 1 and a blue, put a hatchling counter on him. Then, if there are 5 or more counters on him, remove all of them and transform them. So how this ability... Transform is a ability that is from the Plane of Innistrad. In this case, it's from the Innistrad block.
But transforming is an ability that was, up until this year, specific to Innistrad.
Well, it still is.
No,
Oh, wait,
it's
that
not.
is true.
The transforming planeswalkers
You're
exist
right.
now.
I forgot about them.
So it's no longer specific.
Yeah. Anyway, Transform is mostly specific to Innistrad at the plane, with the exception of the Origins Planeswalkers. And so Ludevic's Test Subject is from the original Innistrad. In Shadows over Innistrad, which is the set released this year in 2016, they realized when they started printing new ones that there was a weird rule, like
Interaction,
but it was like abuse you could do, in which cards that weren't supposed to be able to transform multiple times can. And what they did is when they started printing more transform cards in Shadows over Innistrad, they added a special rule that says that if it's already transformed, it can't transform again via the same ability.
right?
That doesn't mean it can't transform again, or it also doesn't mean that it can't transform again during the same instance of the stack. I guess it is, but it's specifically the same ability. So if it's something like, it transforms, and while the stack was doing stuff, it activated the ability on the back, and it transforms again, that's fine, as long as it's 2 different abilities doing the transformation.
Like Elusive Tormentor.
Yeah,
You can't pay 2 mana and discard 2 cards to get it to transform into Insidious Mist and then back again.
Yeah.
You have to let it stick as Insidious Mist and then not be blocked and then pay mana to get it to transform back.
Yep. All this talk about cards and transformation encounters. So you're all probably wondering what Ludevic's Test Subject actually transforms into. Well, Ludevic's Test Subject, after you pay 2 mana to get on the board, if you invest the 10 mana it takes to get him to transform, he transforms into a 13/13 trample lizard horror.
Named Ludevic's Abomination.
Yes. He is a big fellow. He is huge. But he dies to removal, which is his biggest draw. But still, he's a 13/13.
Almost everything dies to... everything dies to removal if you have the right kind of removal.
Fun fact, he actually passes the vanilla test, even if he was vanilla, because a 13/13 for 12 mana is more than what you paid.
That's fair.
And he also has trample. So it works.
Which is like an extra 2 mana.
Yeah, so that's fun. So
it is a fun card. I think I drafted this card. Not drafted. I think I pulled this card during the Innistrad pre-release.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to use it, but I didn't have the ability to. And I didn't have the cards that would help me make use of it.
Yeah, I also went to the Innistrad pre-release, and I actually pulled a Snapcaster Mage.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Snapcaster Mage was not the card I wanted. I wanted this guy. This guy's like 33 cents.
Yeah.
At the time of printing, Snapcaster Mage was $33, and I knew Snapcaster was really good.
Well, for sure.
And I'm happy I pulled one for the sake of monetary value, but I still wanted test subjects. I like them.
You could turn them in for a multiple.
Yeah, definitely. I could get like 100 Ludevic's test subjects for the price of... Actually, I probably could have definitely done that because Ludevic's test subject is also a promo for Innistrad, who has similar but way better art. The art, for those listening, there are actually 2 versions of art for Ludevic's test subject, and therefore 2 different arts for Ludevic's Abomination. There's just the normal one that just came in all the Innistrad packs, and then there's the pre-release promo that you got if you went to the pre-release events that a bunch of people have. So in the art of the normal one, it is what appears to be just a dark, nasty, kind of like researcher lab.
Almost like it looks very much like the basement or dungeon in a castle. There's pillars and there's a window set in the wall.
Yeah, and it's all made of like concrete, and there's just kind of stuff around. And in the center of the room, there's just an egg on a pedestal getting what appeared to be zapped by electricity. And it's just kind of sitting there.
It seems to be pinched by some sort of device and being held in place with, it looks like just energy pouring into it.
Yeah, and when it transforms, it's the same room, and it's actually the same camera angle, but the egg has been cracked open, and there's a big, giant Godzilla-looking lizard thing just smashing the place, and he's huge.
Yeah, the wall in the back with the window has been partially destroyed. The support pillars are being ripped out. Mm-hmm. It's crazy hectic.
Yeah, and if you actually go to the art for Ludevic's test subject, for the promo one, it's kind of similar. It's still the same concept of an egg being like held by some kind of apparatus being zapped by electricity. But this time the egg is like black and dark, and it's like really zoomed in on just the egg. So the only thing you see is the egg being held up by like what essentially is just like two like big prongs just zapping it with electricity. It's
darkened. It seems to be cracking and oozing a blue liquid.
Yeah.
And it's got much more texture to it than the original artwork did.
It just looks better. It looks so much better in more like a badass way. And since it's one of the promo ones, it's foil, and so with all this electricity flying around, it just looks really good.
Yeah.
It was very obviously made to be foil. And he flips into the monster itself, the abomination itself, looks very similar and kind of cooler. The art for it is kind of cooler, but it's hard to see anything, and he's in kind of what appears to be just a basement. You see just some debris on the ground, and he's just kind of standing there.
He's on all fours, as opposed to the other artwork had him on his hind legs. He's looking back over his shoulder and sort of roaring at your viewpoint.
Yeah, but the art itself in this one is a little less cool. I actually prefer the abomination of the first one due to the fact that you can see him destroying stuff, and there's more than just him standing there.
I think I would prefer both instances of the promo art just because I like the new color. I think it's a little bit less normal looking. You see a giant green lizard and it's it's like a little green lizard but bigger.
Yeah.
And this lizard is purple and
there's so much more detail put into it.
There's a lot more. I think there's a lot more love put into this particular piece of artwork.
Yeah. Actually, the artwork, now I think about it, is done by two different people. The original one is done by
Nils Ham.
Or
Niles? I think it's Nils.
Nils. It's Nils. I don't know how to pronounce that.
I think it's...
But the promo is actually done by Karl Kapinski. If I were to say which art I'd prefer, I'd definitely go for the promo one. Because it just looks cooler. It looks so cool. The first one looks fine. It's a little too drab and kind of bland.
It's very flat. It doesn't look like there's as much depth of field to it.
Yeah. I think one of the problems with the art for the regular one is that it just has stuff, but we don't know what that stuff is.
Right.
If there was this is obviously a testing chamber. If there were more just beakers or equipment for science stuff.
Right. It would look more like an alchemist's lab.
Like a lab and just stuff is going on. Now it just looks like an egg. There's some stairs behind it and things. I don't know what those are. I can't really describe what they look like. They're dark and covered in shadows, and they're just stuff. It could be something on a table. It could be a broken pillar. I honestly have no idea what it is.
Right.
But that's the art for that. One thing I do notice is that I don't think they're related, but I thought it was kind of interesting to note that Ludevic's abomination looks kind of similar to the Gitrog monster in Shadows over Innistrad.
They have a very similar face, especially if you're looking at the promo art. They sort of have that same frog-like face.
Yeah, the Gitrog monster is definitely more of a frog than anything.
Oh, well, yeah, it's definitely just a giant frog.
Yeah, so they may be related, Ludevic may have created the Gitrog monster.
Or
by a
he
similar
stole, or he managed to find or steal the Gitrog monster's egg and mutated it.
That could be a thing. Like, they may be related. Gitrog monster is a frog, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, they may be similar. Frogs aren't lizards, but
Distant
still.
cousins, perhaps.
Yeah. But speaking of Ludevic, this is actually probably the closest thing to a card of Ludevic we have, due to the fact that Ludevic just doesn't have a card. And we actually don't know much about Ludevic himself. All we do know is that he's from Havengul, so he's from Innistrad.
He's not a planeswalker.
No.
He shows up in flavor text a lot.
Yeah, he's in a bunch of flavor
He's in
text.
a lot of flavor text, but he doesn't... This is the only card with his name on it. He doesn't have a card himself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things where it seems like, according to the flavor text, that the card is some creation of Ludevic's. I think there's a card where the flavor text reads, "My first experiment escapes me," or something like that.
Yeah, there are a bunch. I looked at a bunch of them. A lot of people like to think that Delver of Secrets is, in fact, Ludevic.
I don't think Wizards would have done that. I think Wizards would want Ludevic to have his own card if he appears on a card.
Yeah, especially since he is a necro-alchemist, because that's one of the few things we do know is he works a lot with zombies and alchemy.
Right.
And so, like, he wouldn't be making bugs. Another thing he did is he's taken Geralf under his wing, which is also another necromancer from Innistrad, who's known for creating all the scabs. How does that pronounce?
I think it's Scobs.
It's Scabe. I mean, he's mentioned in a lot of cards. He's associated with a lot of things with Geralf. And a lot of I think there are some people out there who actually think they think the image of Geralf is the image of Ludevic, because there's a bunch of cards that just have Geralf in it, and it talks about Ludevic in the flavor text. Like, oh, that's Ludevic. Like, I think it's a prized amalgam. Like, it just has, it's a Zambi, but in the art there's like a dude behind it who supposedly made it. And in the art, the dude behind him, like, that's Geralf, but in the
flavor text, it is Stitcher Geralf talking about Ludevic.
Oh yeah, it's a quote from Geralf about Ludevic. Yeah, and this happened in Ludevic's lab. So if we're lucky, Eldritch Moon may have a Ludevic card. If we're lucky.
I would like to see a Ludevic and a Geralf. I would love to see those two printed in the same set together.
That'd be cool. Well, if they do, they'd have to print Gisa too, because Gisa and Geralf are fun.
All of these cards that have so much flavor and history,
and they
don't have cards for them.
Well, they at least have the story for it. Did you read the Uncharted Realms story for Gisa and Geralf?
No, I didn't.
Oh, well, Gisa, they printed the card for Gisa in one of the commander sets. They also have one for Geralf in a commander deck.
That almost seems like cheating to me.
It is cheating, but I'd rather them do that than just not have them at all.
Okay.
And I really like their cards do exactly what they do. The thing about Gisa is she's a ghoul caller.
Yeah.
Which is literally you sing and bring zombies back from the dead.
Is it singing? I always thought it was like chanting or...
No, it's literally singing.
Oh.
You literally call to them. And she sings and brings back zombies. That's just how it works. And Gisa is really, really good at that. And Geralf is a stitcher, so he makes scabs. So he finds zombies and he just stitches them together and makes bigger, scarier monsters.
Right.
And that's what Geralf does. And apparently they fight a lot.
I'd imagine so.
No, I mean, they literally have wars. They sit on, like, towers on the opposite sides of a battlefield and just send their zombies. Like, Geralf has, like, 20 monstrous thing, and Gisa has, like, 100 just little ones. And they just clash, and then they go out for tea on Tuesdays.
It makes me wonder how, like, where do these bodies come from? Innistrad should just be completely depopulated by now.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with the zombies. It's probably because the vampires and the werewolves. And you know why Avacyn exists?
Yeah, to protect...
For this exact reason.
Yes.
Because
and now she doesn't exist anymore.
Which is why stuff's going down. Like, Soren had to do what he did, but Soren done messed up. And spoilers for people who don't know the story of Shadows over Innistrad. Avacyn gets killed. I'm sorry.
It's weird to me that we have the card depicting Avacyn's destruction in the same set that we have Avacyn going the card depicting Avacyn going mad.
Yeah, that's because they're just compressing the story. Because like in the block structure works better in a storytelling way, but it works a lot worse.
The three block structure.
Yeah, the 3-block structure works a lot. The 3-set structure works a lot better in a storytelling way because 3 acts, but it works a lot worse mechanically speaking. And they're like, well, we better just make it better mechanically speaking, and that's one of the reasons why they did 2. But like and if they had 3 sets, they would have had like 1, Avacyn goes nuts. 2, Avacyn gets dead. 3, whatever happens in Eldritch Moon. We honestly have no idea.
Yeah.
Yet. I mean, I have plenty of theories, but that's an entirely different video.
So, but yeah, it's... Innistrad, despite being not one of my favorite sets, has so much flavor to it.
Oh, it does. It's got so much good flavor, too. Like, the guys who made Innistrad, I think they got lucky with normal Innistrad. Like, a lot of people really like it, and I liked it flavor-wise, okay, but it didn't, like, grab me like it grabbed a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. But Shadows over Innistrad has gotten me good. Like, I hold Shadows over Innistrad very high as a lot of people hold original Innistrad. And it may have just been, like, because I came in, like, right on Innistrad, and I'm like, I want to see more of, like, elves and normal fantasy stuff, since I was, like, new to the magic world.
Yeah, instead of the
like
dark
vampires,
gothic
like,
horror.
Like, I've seen this all over the place. Like, I actually, which is weird, because, like, most people who are into fantasy are like, I've seen elves and dwarves and orcs already a billion times, and when I came into Magic, I just wasn't at that point in time. And so I wanted to see more of that. The deck I actually ran Ludevic's Test Subject in. I don't have much to talk about. I seen Ludevic's Test Subject. It was one of those times where I'm like, I always wanted to make a deck made almost exclusively out of counterspells. But I didn't have a win con, so I never really made it. Because I knew I wasn't going to win most of the time, because a deck made almost entirely counterspells isn't particularly good. But I didn't have anything...
Yeah, you need to be able to...
actually win at some point in time. But like, if I'm like, oh cool, I put down 6 mana to bring in this big thing. It's like, cool, I kill it. I can't counter that because I'm out of mana.
Right.
Holy crap. And then they had Ludevic's Test Subject come out. And I'm like, sweet, this is perfect. Because 1, I really like it. And 2, it'll work well in this deck. So what I did is I just like all counterspells and 4 Ludevic's Test Subjects. So I'd be like, alright, playing a game, just to hold up counterspells. And mostly it was multiplayer. So it's like, people can play their stuff. Turn 2, I play my Ludevic's Test Subject. And how it would work is either someone would kill my Ludevic's Test Subject, in which I would devote the remainder of the game making sure he doesn't get to play, because counterspells. Which usually my friend Stuart, so if you're listening, you know this is true. He would invoke my wrath. Mostly because it was fun than anything. And so, like, that happened, or everyone just left me alone. And if someone says, like, alright, I do, like, wrath, and be like, no one wants a wrath to happen, not even me, and I would counter the wrath. Or just, like, if something would bother me, I would counter it, or if something would, like, end the game, I would counter it.
Right.
And just, like, I play this thing that makes everyone lose 10 life a turn, and it's like, yeah, no, I can't let that happen. Counterspell. And, like, at the end of the last person's turn, just like, alright, how much mana do I have open? 4 mana? I can sink that into Ludevic's Test Subject, because I didn't do any counters. However, I knew my opponents well, and a good portion of the time, there was always at least one guy who had, like, removal waiting for the one time that I used all of my mana, and just like, yeah, you used 4 mana to put all 4 of your manas to put things on it. Now I kill spell it.
Yeah, because if you do it at the end of the opponent before you, you're the first one to get priority.
Yep.
So then everyone else gets a chance.
Yep, and well, even if they didn't, like, they get a chance for me activating the ability.
Right.
So in response to you activating your abilities and you're tapped out, I either play a thing on my own or I kill your Ludevic's Test Subject. And be like, no, so I always kept up at least 2 mana.
Right.
Because I know, and this is one of the first times I actually started looking at my opponent's poker faces, because you could see it. because they would be watching you like a hawk.
Right.
Because they would know, like, tap that mana. Like, me, if you actually watch me play, my tell is when I don't care. Because when I'm watching you, it's usually because I'm bored, and I'm like, wonder what he's gonna do. And if I'm like, oh, I hope he does this thing, I'll be like, I don't care. And I'll just like, I'll intentionally not look at them because I'm over compensating.
Right.
Because I'm like, I don't care, do what you want. And like, I do a thing. It's like, I got you.
It's really hard it's really hard to not have a tell in Magic. Because when you're playing with the same group for a while, they start to pick up on just the weird little things you do.
Yeah.
Like
or they just know your deck well enough to like, well, he probably has a thing. Like, he's not going to surprise me. I know his deck.
Right.
But like, yeah, there's things like that, or like eventually you just catch on like what they're doing. It's like, he's lying. Like, I've gotten good. I'm actually pretty good at bluffing, but I've gotten good enough at bluffing to know when I'm not bluffing well, but I don't care.
Right.
Which is like, I don't care what he's doing, but I don't particularly care enough to like act like I don't care. But yeah, I made an entire deck of just full of counter spells and Ludevic's Test Subject, and the whole point of the deck was I'd play multiplayer, and if someone played something I didn't like, it actually won quite a few times, not because I did anything, but because people would kill each other, and I'd let them.
Right.
Unless I had not to, or there were a couple situations and someone threatened to kill me if I didn't help them. And like,
which is kind of a weird bluff, because you could just counter whatever they wanted to do to you.
No, I couldn't. I can't remember what it was.
Or bounce.
Yeah, it was something like that. It's like, I have a way to kill you, and you know I can kill you. I'm like, yeah, you can kill me, and I really can't do anything about it. Like, but I won't if you like counter that, creature. And I'm like, well, on one hand, I don't like the fact that you're pretty much threatening me. On the other hand, I don't like that creature he's playing. But it was like stuff like that. I'm like, fine, and I would like counter stuff. But usually it's like, all right, they would kill each other. There's only 2 people left. I'm like, I flip Ludevic's Test Subject. Oh crap, Devin has a 13/13 trample. I swing Ludevic's Test Subject. Oh crap. Like, someone's taking 13 damage.
Right.
And just like, oh cool, but now Devin has no blockers. What is he going to do? I play another Ludevic's Test Subject. How much mana do you have open? 10. Oh. Crap. It's like, I swing. It's like, what is it? It's a 2/2. I block with my 0/3. Aha, it's a 10/10 now. It's like, lol, mine's a 13/13 now.
The biggest problem I see with Ludevic's Test Subject is it lives Ludevic's Test Subject, it lives just inside lightning bolt range.
It does.
Just inside.
It's just in there. It makes sense. I mean, it would be better if it was a 0/4, but it'd also be better if it was a 0-cost instant speed card that just said you win the game.
Right.
But like, I really like it for what it is.
No, I think it's a fun card. It's not the best card of all time.
Yeah, I think
that lived in alpha.
Yeah, I think it was in standard. There was a deck. If my memory is correct, from 5 years ago in Innistrad when I was just starting. I think the one big deck other than Delver was a blue-red control deck that used Ludevic's Test Subject.
Yeah, I think that's a good solid play. Yeah. I wanted to bring up Thing in the Ice. I think it plays really well with Ludevic's Test Subject.
It's very, very similar.
It is. It's a 0/4 defender for 2, so it's just outside of lightning bolt range.
Yeah.
But it doesn't transform into something as potent as Ludevic's Test Subject.
It's way cheaper because you lose counters, or the counters, you start with counters and they go down by casting instants or sorceries that you're probably going to cast anyway.
So Thing in Ice is 2 mana, 1 in a blue for a 0/4 defender. It enters the battlefield with 4 ice counters on it. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, remove an ice counter from Thing in the Ice. Then if it has no ice counters on it, transform it.
Yep.
And then when it transforms, it's a 7/8, and when this creature transforms into Awoken Horror, return all non-horror creatures to their owner's hands. So when it transforms, if you've already got a Ludevic's Abomination, it stays. You have a 13/13 that they cannot stop, plus you have a 7/8. The 2 of those together is game.
Yeah.
It's a little bit trickier because if it flips before Ludevic's Test Subject does... then Ludevic's Test Subject comes back to your hand, so that's problematic. But other than that, I think they play pretty well together.
Oh, they do play really well together. They're very similar. Like, Thing in the Ice is definitely the newer version of Ludevic's Step Subject, and he's better, generally, because he bounces creatures, because the biggest drawback of Ludevic's Abomination is that he's just a 13/13 trample.
Yeah.
Like, he is big, but...
If they stack up enough blockers...
Or if they just kill it with Doomblade.
Right.
Or anything. I mean, he dies to removal, and he has... Other than trample, he's got 0 evasion. You essentially, you don't run Awoken Horror because he's a 7/8. You run Awoken Horror because he flips things. He bounces all your opponent's stuff.
Yeah.
Which is nuts.
He's an overloaded Cyclonic Rift.
Oh, yeah. Fun.
Essentially for free.
Yeah. Because I actually made a standard deck, and one of my biggest problems was Awoken Horror. Couldn't deal with it. So I was looking at my deck was blue. I'm like, oh, well, Turn to Frog is a thing.
Yeah.
So I can just... I was curious. I'm like, well, if I turn to Frog it, does it still transform? And I looked at the rules, and how it works is when they cast their thing and the ability for Thing in the Ice goes on the stack to transform.
Right.
If at that point in time you turn it to Frog, it'll lose all abilities and become a 1/1 Frog. But it'll still transform. But it's still the same object, so it still has no abilities. So when it does transform, it's still a 1/1 Frog with no abilities.
That's interesting. That's a really weird interaction.
Yeah.
That could also apply to...
transform is, I believe, this may be wrong, is a characteristic of the card itself, like the physical cardboard.
Right.
And not a card. So that way you can't... Like, if you have a copy of a transform card, it can't transform.
Right.
Because it's not a transform card. Things like that.
Okay.
Another fun fact about that, another thing that is a characteristic of the card itself is commanders.
Right.
So if you're a commander, that card is a commander. So if someone copies commander, it doesn't do commander damage. But if you manage to put that commander on the top of your library and manifest it as just like a 2/2 morph creature,
that morph creature is a commander?
It's a commander and it does commander damage, even if it's not flipped.
That's weird.
Yeah, so if you have like a 1/1, or like if you have Jace who's like a 0/3.
Right.
Yeah, like, and you put him like, aha, I will kill you with commander damage, that is a Jace who has 0 power. And I'm not pumping it. I mean, it'll take you 12 turns to do, but still. But other than that, I think that's all I've got on Ludevic's Test Subject.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you guys for listening to Pick a Card, Any Card. Like normal, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or card suggestions, you can email us at
pacac.cast@gmail.com.
Or if you're listening to YouTube, you can leave them in the comments. Fun fact, the reason I have him spell it is because I can't spell it. I try to say it, and I'll just stumble over all the words.
If you listen to episode 1, that happened.